Jennifer, this is Taylor Fudge. Can you all hear me fine?
And Commissioner, thank you. I'm still looking for you in PrimeGov, Mr. Chair.
Let's see. I will make sure that I am logged in. I am in PrimeGov. I'm not. In the. A little rusty. It's been a few months.
Yes. Commissioner Milner, are you on the call with us? I can see you now, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Jennifer.
Welcome all to this call. Thank you for joining us. Francis,
Yes,
I have one more user, John Milner,
got it.
labeled as guest. Would you make him co-host, please? Welcome, Commissioner Milner.
Hi. I think I'm here.
Yes, you are. I can confirm you're in PrimeGov and in your Zoom call. Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, just a quick situation update. Looks like I have 6 commissioners right now, and Commissioner Poor is trying to log back into PrimeGov.
Am I not logged in? Did I lose connection?
Commissioner Poor, it shows you as disconnected. I'm not sure what happened, but you may try and re-enter the meeting.
I will do that now.
The joys of technology, Cassie.
Can't live with it, can't live without it.
This is Katie. It looks like we do have a quorum at this point. If we want to start with the beginning proceedings and hopefully once we get to some items, everybody will be set and ready to go. If that's okay with you guys?
Perfect.
I should be logged back in. Can you see that?
I can confirm, Commissioner Poore, you are in PrimeGov.
Okay,
Awesome.
thank you.
Okay, Katie, I'll get us started then. Welcome everybody to our February special Historic Preservation Commission meeting. This is a scheduled meeting that we are doing in place of the previous couple of months Historic Preservation Commission meetings, trying to catch up on older cases that have not yet been heard. My name is Taylor Fudge, and I'm the chair of this commission. As everyone is aware, during this COVID-19 pandemic, we are still without a physical location for the Historic Preservation Commission meeting. It will instead be live streamed from remote locations. As a reminder, we have muted everybody's mics except for commission members, and we request that everyone joining today, please keep your microphone or phone muted until you're called upon to speak. This will help us minimize distractions, make sure everyone can be heard. As instructed in the agenda, those who called or emailed us in advance to let us know your name, contact number, and agenda item you wish to speak about will be recognized first. Before the commission votes on each item, I will ask if any members of the public wish to speak. Anyone speaking will be given 3 minutes to relay their information. And we really want to reiterate that particular point for citizens and those that wish to be heard today with the gaps we've had over the last couple of months. We absolutely want you to be heard. We do not want to limit your time, but with the number of items that we have for individual consideration, we are going to ask that each person that wishes to be heard limit their time to 3 minutes, and we're going to be trying to take kind of a stricter line on that for this particular call, trying to get everybody out on their scheduled time and on with their lives. Since you are muted, when we do call on you, please unmute yourself on your phone. You'll press *6, state your name and address for the record before you speak. On a desktop or laptop, you'll hover your cursor over the microphone icon or remove that red line that goes in front of it. If we do lose our connection, which happened a couple of months ago, if we lose the connection for this particular meeting, it will be stopped and reconvened once the connection is restored. If communications are unable to be restored within 30 minutes, any items that are remaining for consideration will be continued to the next regularly scheduled Historic Preservation Commission meeting, which will actually occur on April 7th. Next, we have a commission meeting in March. I think that's next week. And at this point, we don't have adequate time to be able to get everybody's items moved to next meeting. So it will be, again, the April 7th at 2 p.m. video conference. Our agenda and documents are located in agenda.okc.gov. If you select the agenda on the right-hand side of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting, you'll be able to see all of those items, and written comments received more than 24 hours before the meeting are posted online and were shared with all commission members. No new materials can be shared with this meeting. With all of that being said, Jennifer, can you please call roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Fudge,
Present.
Commissioner Ryman Philippe, Commissioner Farinay, Commissioner Meacham,
Present.
Commissioner Milner,
Present.
Commissioner Poore,
Present.
Commissioner Remy,
Present.
Commissioner Schultz,
Present.
Commissioner Zacharitz. Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. Procedures for today's meeting are noted in the agenda. For the sake of time, we are asking that any participants refer to this section if they're unfamiliar with the process. Quick note on certificates of appropriateness and appeals to the Board of Adjustments. Regarding certificates of appropriate CAs, when an application has been approved and after a 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the CA to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the CA has been issued. If you need that certificate of appropriateness, please contact HP staff for final design review, inspection, or to withdraw items that will not be completed. Regarding appeals to the Board of Adjustments, any person aggrieved by any decision granting or denying a CA may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustments. All appeals will be made within 10 days of the commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk to the Board of Adjustments. Again, we do have a lot of items for consideration, and we want to make sure we can get through all of those today. But Katie, do we have any news from the Office of the Historic Preservation Officer?
Just a couple of things that I wanted to mention. One is just a reminder to commission members, if you are going to abstain or recuse from an item, or if you're just going to step away for a minute, to please go ahead and let us know. We need to record that for the minutes if you're not present for an item, and it's a little bit tricky to tell that when we're virtual. So if you can go ahead and let us know that you've stepped away. And then the only other thing is I wanted to introduce a couple of new members that we've had added to the commission since the last time we met. We have one additional member who's not able to join us right now, but two new members that we have are Cassie Poor and David Ramey, who are both here today. I was going to see if each of you would just very briefly tell us who you are, say hello, we'll welcome you to the commission really quickly. Sorry, I'm completely putting you guys on the spot with that. I did not tell you I was going to do that ahead of time, but.
I'll go ahead and get started. Hi, I'm Cassie Poor. I work with the Alliance for Economic Development of Oklahoma City, and I have owned a home in Heritage Hills for going on 6 years now.
Hi, my name is David Ramey. I also live in a historic neighborhood. I live in the Paseo district, a little over 2 years now, and I am a licensed architect and excited to be part of the commission. Thanks for having me.
We're very excited to have some new folks and to have a full house as well and have all these seats filled. So looking forward to working with you guys. And that's all I have from the Office of the Historic Preservation Officer. Thank you all so much for joining us for this special meeting and letting us get these agenda items taken care of.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie, and welcome Cassie and David. Glad you guys are here. Have my fellow commissioners had a chance to review the minutes from our previous meeting, which I believe was that November 4th? November 4th. And do we have a motion to accept or modify?
I have, and I would make a motion to accept the minutes from the November 4th, 2020 meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Excellent. Motion from Commissioner Meacham, seconded by John Milner. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
Oh. No. I'm sorry.
That's not how it happens.
No. I'm like, where am I supposed to click?
Well, Jennifer can correct that manually while she's
Okay.
getting that set before we move on to the next item. Just a reminder that a button is going to pop up to motion, and all of you
Okay.
will be able to see it, but just wait a sec and let the person who made the motion click that, and the next person will click it if it says second, when it says second. And then after the motion and second has been clicked, you'll vote. So just have to give it a little bit of time to catch up.
Well, I didn't click that because I have to abstain because I wasn't here. So
I know I didn't see a button.
if she can change that to show me abstaining.
We'll get it corrected for the minutes.
Okay.
So it was moved by Commissioner Meacham, seconded by Commissioner Milner.
Oh, there it is.
Perfect.
Okay.
I'm not seeing a button to vote.
Jennifer or Katie, mine is showing just a status of waiting. I do have the button.
Yeah.
Commissioner Meacham, how would
Yes.
you like to vote on this item?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I have 4 ayes, 2 abstentions, and 3 absent.
Okay.
Sounds like that one is passed.
Okay, I see it now. Okay.
Excellent. The motion carries. Katie, do we have anything from code enforcement?
I have nothing new to report other than what's in the code enforcement reports that were attached to your agenda. As always, if you see an item in that column with a citation number, that tells you that it's progressed from a notice of violation to a citation. If you have questions about any of those or just cases you see on the code enforcement report in general, you can always reach out to staff or to the Action Center for more information.
Perfect. Any continuance announcements or requests?
One other comment, if at all possible, we do need commission members to be visible throughout the meeting, particularly if you're speaking. So if you have the ability to turn your cameras on, just a reminder to do that, especially when you're talking. Thanks.
Perfect. Katie, anything from the public hearings section?
Sorry, no, we have nothing under dilapidated structures and no new National Register nominations at this time.
Looks like item C, we have 5 cases on the consent docket.
So these are all items that staff recommended for approval without any conditions. The commission can ask questions about any of those or pull something if it needs further discussion. But otherwise, you all have the ability to approve all of those items in mass.
Okay, do we have any questions, concerns, comments from fellow commissioners on the consent docket? Do we need a motion to approve the consent docket, Katie?
Yes.
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 Okay, do we have a motion to approve those items on the consent docket?
I would make a motion to approve the consent docket.
I'll second that motion.
Moved by Commissioner Meacham, seconded by Commissioner Schultz. All in favor, please vote in prime gov.
I have no, oh, okay. Am I not going to have a button? Because
You should. If you don't, then we can do yours by voice vote and Jennifer can enter it, but hopefully it'll pop up there for you. If it's letting you motion, then it should be letting you vote. So
no, it didn't let me do that either.
Oh, well, I don't know.
Okay.
Commissioner
I'll
Meacham,
vote.
how would you like to vote on this item?
Aye.
Okay, the consent docket has passed. If you are on the consent docket, you're free to stick around unless you want to hear everything that we're going to be going over in the cases for individual consideration. Katie, do we have any other business or that's not till later on in the agenda. So I will wait to ask about that. We'll move straight into the cases for individual consideration.
Okay. And just for anyone who was on the consent docket, you will receive your approval from staff. Feel free to reach out to HP staff if you have any questions, but you are approved and there won't be no further discussion of your application. You're approved. Under individual consideration, our first item is HPCA 20-51 at 436 Northwest 30th Street, Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by George Mendros, JHM Architecture and Design LLC for Mumtaz Khan for certificate of appropriateness to install window and entry door to north elevation elective, 2, remove stair, ramp, and door on the east side of the structure elective, 4, reconfigure entry to rear side of structure elective, and 6, install drive and parking lot elective. The commission has seen this application twice previously, so we're out of continuances. Everything either needs to be approved or denied today. Staff has recommended approval for reconfiguring the entrance on the side of the building and the rear of the building, but recommended denial for the changes to the front facade and for the parking. Additional information or revisions to that appear to be necessary before we can proceed with an approval for each of those items.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie. Is the applicant present? Check again. Is the applicant on this particular case for individual consideration present?
I can see the architect. I can see Mr. Mendros in Zoom.
Mr. Mendros, perhaps you're muted.
Unmute. Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfect. We can hear you.
Okay.
what I want to reiterate on this particular case, we don't have any continuances left. Staff has recommended approval for the side entrance. It looks like we need more information on the parking and particularly the intended use for that lot. And then I believe, from what I recall in the last time we heard this, was that there were some changes to the front of the building that commission had asked for, and I don't believe that they were addressed. And want to reiterate, we're going to try and limit comments to 3 minutes from the public. But commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant or the architect?
Do we have a new design for the front of the building?
What you have is sheet A04, and it's D, the proposed north elevation. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the only difference is for the canopy, in the last meeting we discussed that we were going to, there was a building, a couple doors down, that we were going to have a similar canopy that you all said that you would be for. So that would be on the A04 sheet, that would be D, would just have a canopy that resembles the structure two doors down.
And can you also talk to us about parking and specifically intended use for the parking lot? I will say for my own purposes, just the entrance and exit, it feels challenging to say the least on parking. And that was a question for the applicant. If you could address, please. Did we lose the applicant?
I don't see him now.
So Commissioner Meacham, it's my understanding and looking through the packet is that the changes to the front of the building were not addressed. I believe it's the same configuration as was previously suggested. Angela or Katie, is that correct?
I believe that's correct. There were some revisions that were discussed by the commission the last time we saw this. And I know there was some discussion about the awning, but that hasn't really been illustrated. And I don't believe any other changes to the proposed elevation had been made either.
Okay. So
Has the applicant met with staff to discuss some changes?
We have, it's been a little while now since the last time that we discussed it, but we did talk about the changes. We looked at some images of how this building has evolved over time, and but it would have originally been a bungalow similar to other houses down the block from it, and has enclosed the front porch and made some other changes. So we've had some conversations about it, but haven't gotten any revisions to that front elevation at this point.
I'm sorry, Katie, could you just briefly tell us do you remember what the commission, I was not here, what the commission discussed as far as making changes?
So at one point, the building had kind of a false front on it.
I'm sorry, we lost you. I'm sorry, we lost you. Are you there?
Yes, we're still here. I was going to.
Okay, I'm so sorry. We lost you, but we're here now.
Okay.
Our apologies.
So my recollection is that we talked about how the building had, within the recent past, had a false front to it that looked like kind of more of a commercial structure. And at some point in time that came off and went back to this facade. We talked about how it originally would have been a house and would have had a front porch that likely was enclosed at some point in time, and that perhaps something more in line with what you see at places like Cuppy's and Joe that reflect that residential kind of historic architectural character might be a more appropriate change for the building than adding more commercial style windows and storefront appearance. But I don't think that they went away from the last commission meeting with specific direction of do this and this and this, just that they needed to reevaluate the design.
Thank you.
So the other question that
I mean,
we had, oh, go ahead.
I just go ahead and say, if the applicant wants to comment on going towards more of a residential design versus what you're applying for, did you want to discuss that, sir?
Going towards a residential design opposed to what we have right now.
Yes, sir.
We can discuss that, absolutely.
Okay.
And that being said, is that we would just change the canopy, like we had discussed before, the canopy in the previous meeting that kind of represents replicates the awning that's a couple of doors down, where it's like a porch more setting and so forth. Because we're still talking about the front facade, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
I know sometimes this is difficult. I feel like that they are suggesting that the entire front be more reflective of a bungalow porch and less reflective of a commercial building. And I'm in agreement with staff that it needs to maybe head that direction. Unfortunately, we have a situation where there's no more continuances. I mean, I would be happy to go ahead and approve the two that staff have recommended for approval, but and then you all can, continue to work on the design for the front and come back at a later date with a new application.
Okay, but right now, the way it sits is that you're not wanting to allow anything of the front proposed elevation right now? Any of those elements, the window?
I would just agree with staff, I guess, that I feel like that we could have a different design that was better reflective of the original structure.
Okay, and if we were to do that, then we would just reapply for that front elevation. Is that correct?
I'll let our chairman
Correct.
talk to
You
you
just
about
submit a
that.
new application when you're ready for that.
Okay, we're okay with that. But if we can discuss a little further on the parking in the rear, we're working with the city in getting the correct layout, if you will, for the rear. We've adjusted it for their code comments to make it correct. And this is not for the public per se. This is more it's a private parking lot in the rear for employees and so forth. It's not really going to be open to the public. And that's going to cause that's going to be a lot of help, because right now the parking here is so limited, and the city just requires that we have 14 parking spaces for this type of assembly.
So Katie, would we, if the city says that the parking configuration is fine for their intended use with tenant parking as opposed to general public parking, are we comfortable with the configuration of the parking lot as it currently stands?
So in general, just looking at the site plan, we would not typically recommend approval for paving, every inch of the entire site, unless it was required for them to have that much parking. Without more information about what the use of the building is and how much parking is required and what options there are for configuration of that parking, it would be difficult for us to make a judgment call one way or the other on that. I would really want to work with the applicant and with plan review on what they're required to provide, whether there's an option for any variances to address those parking requirements. Especially with all the paving that's already in the front of the building, we'd really like to reduce that if possible.
So it sounds like there are a couple of items that can be approved. There's a couple items that, because we're out of continuances, will need to be denied, likely without prejudice. And then the applicant can reapply specifically on those items. And it sounds like the denials would be on the front configuration of the building and potentially on the parking lot, with the applicant to work with staff on intended use and configuration and all of that going forward. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
If I can make a comment, do you all have sheet ASP01, where a site plan where it actually shows a deck that we're proposing to put in the rear and all that?
Look through.
Yes.
So we tried to make, and within that deck, there'll be some green area too. There'll be some planters and so forth. And you don't have the latest and greatest. We've been working on it, but we are planning on putting some green area in the parking lot as well, some islands and so forth.
I certainly think that will help the cause. Unfortunately, we with our limited amount of time today, we can't focus on the design elements. But if you would put that in the new application going forward, staff will work with you guys and hopefully we'll be able to figure out a solution that can be approved.
And this is Katie. We do have the ability to approve things like paving and decks in the rear of the property. So that may be something that staff can approve administratively as well, once you have those details worked out.
Excellent, because yes, we've worked with JJ from the zoning department as well as everything else. So we've been trying to get all our ducks in a row, if you will, but it's just a matter of getting everyone on board and going through all the proper steps and procedures. And they just keep on defaulting, saying that that's something that the historic preservation is going to have to approve before they can go further with our design and so forth. So we're just trying to get everything done per code, and then you all will have to approve it.
I mean, Katie, could you have some kind of discussion with them on the potential variance for the 14 parking spaces?
Yes, and we've talked before that whenever the applicant is ready, staff can certainly set up a time to meet with them and with plan review or with subdivision and zoning to talk about what the various requirements are and how those will need to move forward through the HP review process. I think that's probably where we're at this point. We need to all meet together to talk about what the project is and what the different requirements are.
If you all can agree on that, is that something staff can work out and then the applicant can just come back for the front of the building? Or
Potentially, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, potentially, yes. Okay. So that would be the best scenario if you go ahead and meet with them, and then I would go ahead and make a motion to approve items 2 and 4 and deny the other ones, but then you would make a new application. But at the same time, it sounds like it's possible for you to work out the parking without waiting for another meeting. And so that would just be that the next application we would just discuss the front of the building. Is that something you would want to do?
We would be on board with that.
Okay.
Excellent.
I'll second that motion.
This is Katie. Just to confirm, that's a motion to approve 2 and 4 with the findings in the staff report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it'll be separate motions. Sounds like the approvals were put forth by Commissioner Meacham, seconded by Commissioner Poor. All in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do we need to vote on that one in Prime Gov first, or do we vote on this all together?
We'll vote separately on the one on the motion to approve, and then we'll vote again to deny the other items.
Yes.
Do we have any other, I guess before we go there, did we have any other citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project?
I don't believe we had anyone contact us to comment, so.
Perfect. Okay, so we had a motion for approval with the findings as noted in the staff report by Commissioner Meacham, seconded by Cassie Poor. All in favor, please vote.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
I have not seen a button yet to vote.
Mr. Chair, I pushed the correct button. How would you like to vote on this item?
I will vote aye as well.
Did you get my vote as aye? This is Commissioner Meacham.
I did. Thank you so much.
There we go.
Thank you.
Mine did pop up. That motion passes. Those two items are approved. Commissioner Meacham, did you have a motion on the denials?
Yes, I make a motion to deny items. Went away too fast. Items 1 and 6 without prejudice of, with the specific findings as noted in the staff report.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Meacham, seconded by Commissioner Poor. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
No, but Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Okay, the denial without prejudice is passed. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, and we'll move on to item number 2,
Thank
HPCA
you
20. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Awesome. We appreciate you. So we'll move on to item number 2, HPCA 20-00120 at 621 Northwest 25th Street.
This is located in Paseo, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Luis Hernandez, LD Construction Incorporated, for Amaro and Euphemia Montoya for certificate of appropriateness to 1, reconstruct front porch and steps required, and 2, construct brick arches at front porch required. The commission has seen this application previously, and it was continued. The application is back before you today with, I think, some new drawings, but the same proposal for the work being done to the front porch. I also want to let the commission know that we do have an interpreter present with us today that was requested by the applicant.
Excellent. Is the applicant and interpreter present today?
Interpreter is present.
Excellent. Okay, so looks like notes on this particular project. The porch was rebuilt without a certificate of appropriateness. I think at this point, we have recommended denial because we haven't seen any new proposed changes. But commissioners, what questions do we have for the applicant?
Comisionado, ¿qué preguntas tienen para el solicitante?
Holly, are you on this? I could see you speaking, but I didn't know if you were.
I hadn't unmuted. Can
Okay.
you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. The Montoyas had contacted me recently to help them get into compliance. So again, the drawings you're seeing today are the proposal that is with this current package. Since this is their 3rd meeting, you all know we'd be exhausted of all of our ability to do continuances. So I think moving forward, our idea here is to go ahead, be heard on this, and if denial is the way that the commission feels we need to go, then I'll be prepared with that new design at the next meeting.
Is there anything in addition that the applicant wishes to relay to the commission?
Holly, do you know if they're on the call right now? Is the property owner on the call with us?
I am not sure of that one way or another. I'm sorry. It was my understanding that yes, they were going to call in.
Okay.
But and again, the language barrier has been an issue. One thing I will just say to get your feedback on, would it help, since the base of this porch is the brick with the applied stucco finish, and that was existing, so what the portion that was removed was just that screen porch, and so they've come in with this brick. Would it be helpful if we did a stucco application over these brick arches as a way to somewhat match some of the architecture that was there? I realize that style-wise this isn't very congruent, but here we are. It's not ideal, so I just thought I would see if that's something that the commission would see as approvable.
Can you just remove the arches?
Yes, so in the new proposed design, which the homeowners have seen, we would be proposing removing the arches, going back with a straight beam across the top, as well as some just wood columns. Roughly the same size, about a ½ inch smaller, but roughly in the same location. But again, removing the brick and going back with wood to fit the bungalow style a little bit closer, I think is what the commission or the staff had mentioned to me, and I've prepared that design for the next meeting should this go to denial.
Well, that's what I would support, Holly. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my comment is, unfortunately, I think that we are going to have to deny this particular item and ask that new proposed changes be submitted for consideration, unfortunately. I don't know if we have anyone else that feels that way, but that's where I'm at.
I would say the same. I mean, it's one of those unfortunate situations that we always hate to see. And Holly, we so appreciate you all coming in and giving assistance here. So I think we all are, I mean, I think this is where it's been headed. We've waited for a new design, and since they've ran out of time, but are willing to continue on. I think staff's willing to help you, Holly, do anything that they can. So I would go ahead and propose to deny HPCA 20-00120 today, items 1 and 2.
Thank you, Commissioner Meacham. Do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Moved by Commissioner Meacham, seconded by Commissioner Schultz. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
As Commissioner Meacham, I vote aye.
Are we denying with or without prejudice?
Katie?
I think we can deny with prejudice because a new proposal is going to come back with a different, theoretically, with a different design.
Okay.
With prejudice.
Okay, that denial with prejudice has passed. We are looking forward to the new designs. Thank you, guys. I believe.
Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Carlos. So I believe item number 3 was removed. Is that correct?
Yes, that item has been withdrawn. So we'll move to item 4, which is HPCA 20-00143 at 701 Northwest 16th Street, Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Kenneth Onchman, AIA Preservation and Design Studio, for Lindsay and Michael Deitch for certificate of appropriateness to 7, construct retaining wall and relocate stairs elective, and 8, install fence elective. The commission has seen this proposal previously and has approved several items at this property, but these 2 items were continued. This proposal takes some existing stairs and a retaining wall at the rear east side of the property and relocates those, extending the retaining wall closer to the street and farther down toward the rear of the primary structure of the house, with stairs at the rear of the structure. Staff's main concern is that this is introducing a retaining wall where one did not exist historically and is altering the rolled terrace there on the side street, which is a historic feature typical throughout the historic districts. So for those reasons, staff did not recommend approval of the items at this time.
Thank you, Katie. Is the applicant present?
Here.
Excellent. Commissioners, what questions do we have for the applicant, if any?
So this is Catherine Montgomery, the architect for the applicant. And it's been quite some time since you've seen this case, and we've provided several additional exhibits as requested from the first meeting. So, we're happy to entertain any questions that you have regarding the exhibits or the project.
Catherine, can you just describe what's different on this application than the first application?
So starting with, on your staff report, starting with page 11, nothing has changed. The location of the proposed fence and retaining wall are the same as before. what we've supplied is on page 12, we tried to superimpose on the county assessor's aerial where the proposed fence and wall would go. And then on page 13, we've provided additional details on the construction of the steps. On page, well, this one actually says page 41 of 59. It's the next page. This was submitted previously. Page 15, I think, is pretty instructive because it gives you kind of a picture of what it would look like completed. And you have two human figures there to give you a sense of scale. So we've basically taken a photograph and superimposed the steps and the wall, and you can see that with the change in grade, there's a few steps, just like there are with the current fence as it steps up towards the south. And then that fence that's up there. So that would be the same height of the fence that's proposed. I think, oh, yes. And then on page 19, we did a survey mostly limited to Lee Avenue and showing you how many in pink, if you can see it in pink, properties 8, 7, 5, 3, 2, all currently have retaining walls. And then properties 4 and 1 have what we call yard walls, which are solid masonry walls that aren't retaining anything, but they're acting as fences. And then we have our property location in yellow. And so you can see that there are several properties that already have addressed the concern about erosion on Lee Avenue.
Catherine, I think it'd be helpful if you just stated, why do we need these? I mean, I understand that you want them, but in some ways it makes sense to me. I'm not, but that's what I would like to hear is why do you have to make these changes to make this project work?
So basically we've tried to, we have a backyard fence that right now is, it's falling apart. The soil is moving. It's hard to keep the fence level and in place. And so what we've proposed is the retaining wall that it still maintains a portion of the rolling terrace so that we have that, but then we have a retaining wall so that we can make the rolling terrace more manageable. We felt that this was a good solution because we've got the rolling terrace in the front of the house and on the side where the house is, where there's no fence and no concern in that regard. And so this particular wall and fence is being proposed simply to help us manage, the enclosure of the backyard.
This is Ken, also with Preservation and Design, Ken Ochman with Preservation and Design Studio. If you go back to the picture that the city was just showing, you can see that the fence is tipping out at the top.
Right. I guess I would just say that I think that, these things look different everywhere. And in this case, I feel I really want to just trust your judgment that this is going to that you're doing this to fix a problem. It's similar to other designs. And so, I mean, at this point, I'm pretty unopposed to this, it's fine. I don't think that the change is that significant. I don't know what my other commissioners feel like, but I've looked at it and I just feel like that if they're doing it to solve a problem and it's so similar that I'm not really opposed to it. That's all I have.
I think Commissioner Meacham, I can get there as well. My big concern was that the retaining wall would completely do away with the rolled whatever, rolled terrace, rolled lawn, whatever you call that. But I do appreciate the fact that part of that was kept intact, to preserve some of the integrity. The fact of, I don't know if is fixing a fence, ensuring that the fence is there long-term, is that a unique enough circumstance for us to be able to approve this? And then the other question that I've got is the other set of stairs necessary at this point when it looks like there's a perfectly good set of stairs, 100 feet, whatever direction that is.
I'm Mike Deach, the property owner. On what has already been passed on the previous submissions of replacing the garage, those stairs you see will have to go away.
Okay.
And so then we won't have a good way to exit the backyard. So our thought was to move them to the other end of the fence.
Makes sense.
This is Commissioner Schultz, and I'd like to ask Katie or Angela, if this was continued, where would you try to guide this application? What results? I mean, where would you be working on making this more in compliance with the guidelines?
This is Katie.
If we continued it, what would you be asking the applicant to do?
This is Katie. So our main concern, staff's main concern, is that the guidelines don't support adding retaining walls on street-facing locations where they did not exist historically. So that's why we didn't recommend approval of it at this point. We would want to look at whatever changes the commission does feel are approvable, whether that is the introduction of some portion of a retaining wall or some other design to accommodate the stairs that the property owner mentioned that they're trying to install. There's a number of different ways to install stairs at the side of the property like that, with or without a retaining wall going down the entire length of the yard. So we would just take whatever guidance you all provide today and the comfort level that you have with whether or not a retaining wall is introduced in that location, if it were to be continued.
So how tall would the fence be with the retaining wall, and it's in the sort of the front portion?
This is Ken. It's 9'5".
So that's, for me, that's a lot on the front. To do it away with the slope, put in a retaining wall, and have a 9-foot fence.
If you look at,
No, the fence would be 6 feet.
Right. And I mean, we have many situations in this neighborhood where we have very tall fences as a result of this same situation of a sloping yard, or in some cases, a historic stone fences, and then it sits up and stuff. I mean, we even have had, concrete stucco walls that are very, very tall. I mean, is there any way, Catherine, that particular fence could be shorter?
We hadn't really discussed that. Our applicant does, or client does have dogs, and I think their desire is to maximize the height of the fence that they can have, because they want to be able to, keep their dogs in the backyard. So
I mean, is it
what's desired?
Is it the same height as if the slope were still there?
Yeah, if you look at page 15, I think this is a really good illustration, because if you look at page 15, you can see the street, the curb, the grass between the curb and the sidewalk. You can see the sidewalk. You can see the part of the rolling terrace, and then how much of the wall would be set, back from the sidewalk. You can see how tall those people are, and they're not really tall people. They're like 5.5 feet tall. And then you can see the fence sitting on top of the wall, which is the fence that's illustrated there is the existing fence. So which is 6 feet.
So the overall height of the fence would not really change much, given where it's currently located. You would still have about 3.5 feet from the sidewalk to the bottom of the fence, plus a 6-foot fence on top is what they have already.
I mean,
Just-
Catherine, would you say, I mean, if you were stating a unique circumstance, is it that you need the wall to stabilize the backyard? Is that what you said earlier?
Yes.
If you bring the homeowner, if you bring the fence all the way back towards the property to get it on level ground, you'd have to come so far back to actually get to completely level ground that it would almost be, inset into the backyard, inset into the, you can't quite see it from these pictures, but it starts rolling quite a ways back. You'd almost be inset into the corner of the house almost for us to bring the fence back on the level ground.
Well, that would probably make the fence look bigger than it would be in this proposed design as well, likely.
It would, because when you look at the top of the fence on page 15 of 31, it's actually, kind of short next to the house. Is that correct, Catherine?
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing the picture is that, we didn't manipulate the photo except to put our retaining wall and our step in.
So this is Commissioner Poor. The fact that it doesn't raise the height of the fence and it seems to be solving an issue of erosion, and the fact that you've shown that other houses to the north and south have included a retaining wall to solve for the grade issue. I feel like it's a solution that is logical, in my opinion.
I can get there as well. I mean, it obviously will change the topography and, a little bit of the look, but I think that they're working, towards keeping the integrity of the lawn and preserving the ground in the backyard as well. So I think I'd be pretty comfortable with this, either approval or continuance if there's other items that need to be addressed with staff.
I just think that the rolling slopes have been there a long time. So there are other ways to, it may not be the way you want to do it, but there are other ways to deal with topographical kinds of issues around the slope. I mean, this is going to sort of move down and be really quite a structure. And I personally think that the rolling slope fronts are really important to the look of the historic look of the neighborhood. So, I'm kind of stuck on that.
I see that point, Commissioner Schultz, and I would imagine rolling slopes are going to be, under siege coming up here in the next, several months, which is a concern for me. I don't want people, everybody in the neighborhood to think, oh, we can put in a retaining wall and this guy down the street did it. But to me, if there's unique enough circumstances, I think we could make it work. But I agree with you there.
Yeah, I just don't think a rolling slope front yard in the historic district is a unique circumstance. I think that, people have dealt with them for a long time. Now, have other people done things? I guess. We don't know the circumstances of those, and we don't know when or how. I mean, we don't have that documentation.
If I may, I'd like to call your attention to page 26 of 31 on the staff report. This is just an overall aerial shot of the property. And you can see kind of how big the house is, how much front yard and how much side yard there is. And you can see that the area where the this short retaining wall is being proposed is limited to the backyard, with the exception of the steps that, kind of comes a little bit south of that corner. But it's limited to that area of that white line. I think if you look at the photographs on page 27, which, are the county assessor's photographs over time, you can see, you know, that at least on page 27, that you wouldn't even be aware that there was a retaining wall on the side of the property. This is the view from the front where the rolling terrace is being proposed. You can also see that the rolling terrace is shorter in the front, and how much the sidewalk is sloping to the east towards the street. Is it Lee Avenue? Yeah.
It is Lee Avenue, yes.
And then the photographs on page 28 kind of take you around the corner. On that 2020 photograph shows you how the rolling terrace remains on the front and the
Side yard.
and the side of the house. Then you have the photograph on page 29, which it's a little bit in shadow, but it shows you where the fence is now. And you know, we're just proposing that rolling terrace gets a little bit of support. As you look back on the page of the aerial, and you can see how small of an area that we're really talking about, and especially in comparison with some of the other fence walls and retaining walls that are on that street, which get right up against the sidewalk. We've really consciously proposed to push this one back away from the sidewalk so that so it's not as imposing as you know, it would be if it was right up against that sidewalk or even 2 feet away.
Is it on the city
Like you
right
to
of way?
consider those points.
Well, and I think that is kind of a challenge for the homeowner on a corner lot too. A corner lot imposes additional responsibility on a homeowner, and I get that that's probably frustrating. So I take your points.
You know, with the homeowner, I would, you know, point out that we're not asking to do anything in the rolling terrace in the front. And since we actually bought the property 18 months ago, we've spent a good amount of money in sod, and we've, you know, fixed kind of the slope and in the front yard and made sure to maintain that. We had a lot of dirt work done so that we could, that the front yard was eroding. There was no sod there. We've fixed all that, brought the slope back into conjunction with our neighbors and resodded it. So we've embraced and fixed and done a lot of work on the front to make that rolling terrace in the front be what it should be. So yeah, we're not proposing anything on the front of the yard.
And the side of the house as well.
Yeah, even the side of the house. And yeah, it's really just the backyard. Yeah. We chose to do the landscaping on the side just for, you know, not having to use as much irrigation and, you know, trying to be water conscious and not sod that area. There just has, you know, low water needing grasses for the side where you can see we did the landscape work.
This is Commissioner Ramey. So if I'm understanding the application correctly, the benching would break at that new stair. Is that right?
I'm sorry, the what?
The rolled terrace will break at that new stair. So we're just talking about, okay.
Yeah, near the north corner of the house.
So I personally don't have an issue with that proposal. If you go up and down Lee in that particular area, block either direction, there isn't any rolled terracing. So I think the fact that the front yard and the side portion of the front yard are maintained, I applaud. I also agree that the design is sensitive to keep that fence off the actual sidewalk. So I think providing some relief there helps with that 6-foot fence on top of what is the existing grade. So I don't have any issue with the proposal personally. One thing that I might consider, just as a suggestion, is maybe consider veneering that concrete retaining wall in brick. And that doesn't sway it either way. That's just a consideration. But I don't have an issue with this personally, given the context of that area only.
Okay, I feel like we've had some good conversation about this. I think we've certainly exhausted our time period for the 30 minutes for the applicant. In the effort, in terms of keeping us on task today, do we have a motion on this particular project?
I would make a motion. I'm looking at the staff report so I can get this correct. Let's see, I would make a motion to for items 7 and 9 to construct a new retaining wall, stairs, and install the fence. Okay, so I'm looking at, just a second, I'm looking at the findings here. I'm just going to say with a unique circumstance that that the limited amount of retaining wall versus the rolling slope on the entire side of the house itself and the front of the house itself, that since that's a limited area and since it's being done to provide continuing maintenance of the yard, that is the unique circumstance. And I don't think I have any conditions. Will that motion make it?
That motion is fine, just to note that it's items 7 and 8, not 7 and 9. We might have a typo on the staff report, but.
Oh, okay.
That's.
I'm just reading.
Yeah.
7 and 8. Thank you.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Meacham. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Seconded by Commissioner Poor. All in favor, please vote in prime gov.
I vote aye. This is Commissioner Meacham.
Okay, looks like that motion was approved and passed. Items 7 and 8 are ready to go. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yep.
For your consideration. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Let's see. Item number 5, HPCA 2000154 at 708 Northwest 18th Street.
This is in Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Paula Morrow for certificate of appropriateness to 5, construct pergola elective, and 6, install rock retaining wall planting bed elective. Both of these items are proposed in the backyard. They'll be somewhat visible from the street, but they're at the back of the lot behind the primary structure. The proposed pergola is in the approximate location of where one might have seen a garage historically. There's no longer a garage in that location. They were administratively approved to remove that carport structure. So the pergola will go in that location. And then the retaining wall planting bed will go roughly where you see the curb retaining wall along the side of the yard across from the garage now. Staff did recommend approval of these items with conditions regarding some additional details on the and documentation on the retaining wall planting bed.
Katie, do we have any applicants or citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project?
I don't believe we heard from any neighbors or from the neighborhood on this application, but I do believe we may have yes, the applicant is on the call if there are questions for the applicant or if they need to clarify anything.
Perfect. Okay, so staff is recommending approval on the pergola. Sounds like it's an appropriate location for an accessory structure, and then approval on the retaining wall, but needing more specifications on that particular wall and planting bed. Do we have questions from commissioners for the applicant?
Is the applicant willing to do the conditions listed on the staff report?
Is that a question for me?
That's for the applicant. There's conditions listed on the staff report, or are you willing to follow those conditions?
Where are the conditions? I do not see those.
The proposed alteration will not be visible, and that the details will be submitted to staff prior to release of the CA.
Are you talking about the planting bed or the pergola?
The planting bed.
Well, since I had sent this in, I have decided to change it a little bit. Do I need, should I tell you what that is?
Please do.
Okay, so the rock bed, we were gonna put rock along the side of this cement wall because it's pretty ugly. But I've decided that's too complicated, and all I'm gonna do is when they come to do the driveway, ask them to put a very thin layer of cement on top of that retaining wall and then just do some concrete stamping. And that's it. I'm not gonna use, I'm only gonna put portable pots there now. I'm not gonna create any kind of planting bed. So that will not be visible from the road. Is that okay, or do I need to resubmit for something that simple?
Katie?
I think what we could do, I think we could approve on the condition that those details are submitted to staff, and then we can work with the applicant on making those changes. I think in concept, it's still essentially the same thing as far as a kind of a decorative treatment of that retaining wall at the back corner of the yard.
Okay, that sounds great.
I would make a motion to approve HPCA 20-00154 with the specific findings, unique circumstances, and conditions as listed and discussed in the meeting.
So is one of those specific findings, Commissioner Meacham, that they would have to visit with staff on the treatment of the beds?
Yes, and it already listed additional documentation for design details, so yes.
Awesome. Okay, moved by Commissioner Meacham. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by
Commissioner
Commissioner Remy. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Okay, these items have been approved with conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 6, HPCA 20-00165 at 2225 Northwest 28th Street. Is the applicant or present, or do we have any citizens that wish to be heard?
I'm the architect. I'm not listed as the applicant because Foster Davis, the applicant and contractor, originally submitted some drawings. They were not at a professional level. They contacted us to draw professional style or professional level drawings for you all to review. I mean, that's what you're seeing today. Pretty simple addition. We're reusing and relocating what existing windows we can. Those that are new will be identical to the existing wood windows, which are all in pretty good shape in this one, luckily. So again, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but again, pretty straightforward addition in the rear, not visible from the public right of way.
Let's see. So notes that I've got on this particular addition, sounds like there was some, from the design perspective, there needed to be some differentiation between the addition and the primary structure. Has that been addressed, and what is the thought process going forward on that?
Sure. So as before it was not differentiated on my drawings, you'll see that we've taken a row of the existing brick that will be matching, and we'll run that in a roll lock vertical up the wall. Doesn't really make any sense in this case for us to step in the addition, given that we have this 1-story element off of the rear of the house. So really, in keeping with the existing architecture, we aligned the new addition walls with the existing. So in order to make that differentiation, there's some variation in the roof. For one, since we're tacking into this existing roof, we're going to create a new ridge line. So that existing roof will remain there for a moment as it makes that corner, and then our new roof will extend out beyond. That, and in addition to the roll lock, the vertical roll lock band of brick, we hope that'll make enough distinction for the commission. And again, all of these, that line is well beyond the rear fence line.
Well, I'll go ahead. I'll just say, that we say it says in the guidelines, it says in the guidelines, we need to have a distinction. And usually we don't allow a flat distinction, but in this case, I would say I'm in agreement with the architect that this, in this case, it's distinctive enough, in my opinion. That's what I have to say about that.
Thank you, Commissioner Meacham. Do we have any other comments on the distinction between the existing and what's going to be built? Or any other concerns with the project that we want to make sure we address with the applicant and architect? Okay, any other citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? Or Katie, is there anything else we need to look at or address here?
I think that was staff's main concern, was just whether or not the differentiation was sufficient.
Okay. So I think it was a continuance was recommended. Certainly an approval could be made if we feel that the differentiation is there. Do we have a motion on either one of those particular items?
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve HPCA 2000. Wait a minute, I got the wrong number. HPA, it is 00165 items. I'm sorry, I got my papers mixed up.
Just one item.
One.
Just item one.
With the specific findings in the staff report.
Moved by Commissioner Schultz. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by
Katie,
Commissioner.
are there any findings you want to add to address since the staff report was not recommending approval, perhaps that strike finding number 5, that additional differentiation may be necessary?
Oh, okay. Striking number 5.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Katie.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Schultz, seconded by Commissioner Meacham. All in favor, please vote in prime gov.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Okay, this item has passed. Enjoy your new addition.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Moving on to item number 7, HPCA 20-00171 at 433 Northwest 28th Street.
This is in Jefferson Park, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Ty McBride, Old House Rescue, for Jack Chamberlain, 945 Uptown LLC, for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace windows elective. The staff report does say recommend approval with conditions, but as that was drafted and put out, we were able to work with the applicant, and all those conditions have been met that were a concern for staff. This is a property that has a mix of historic and later replacement windows. And so all of the work that's proposed appears to meet relevant guidelines for window replacement at this time.
A couple additional notes that I had was that the non-historic windows are being altered to mirror each other, and that the historic windows are also mirroring each other as well, and that everything has been done by the applicant to make sure that this is approved. But is the applicant present? Do they wish to speak? Do we have any other citizens that wish to be heard, or questions from commissioners?
I think I'm on here. Can everybody hear? This is Ty McBride.
Yes, sir.
I don't have anything to add to what Katie said.
Perfect. Questions from commissioners? Any citizens that wish to be heard? Okay, so staff was recommending an approval. Do we have a motion from the commission?
I make a motion to approve HPCA 20-00171 with the specific findings as noted by staff in the staff report.
Moved by Commissioner Meacham. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Poor will second.
Seconded by Commissioner Poor. All in favor, please vote in prime gov.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Okay, the motion is passed. Enjoy those new windows. Thank you. Moving on to item number HPCA 2000176 at 4020 Northwestern Avenue.
This is in Crown Heights, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Victor McAllister, Verticom for Sierra Marino, Verizon Wireless for certificate of appropriateness to one, install 30-foot tall black metal small cell pole in streetscape elective. This is a proposal to install a small cell along Western Avenue in the public right of way. As we've talked about with some of these previously, the city and the commission specifically have fairly limited ability to regulate where these are placed. We did work with the applicant to try to identify a location that would be the most minimally impactful for the neighborhood. We're not in anybody's front yard, anything like that. It's on kind of a more car-oriented thoroughfare adjacent to a parking lot. We were not able to administratively approve it because the guidelines talk about being located as far away from the street and in an alley, that sort of thing. And it is obviously very close to a main street, but this appears to be the most feasible location for the applicant that also minimizes the impact as much as possible on historic character. And we do have the applicant on the phone or on the Zoom call if you all have questions for them about this installation.
Perfect. Thank you, Katie. And my understanding is that we have very limited ability to say no on this particular item, and that there are many, many statutes that dictate what is allowed, what we are allowed to review and not review. This location, in my opinion, I can actually see it from my house on this picture on the screen. That is Target Insurance is not Target Insurance. That is my residence. And for me, this seems to be a fine location, and I would probably vote to recommend approval. I know it's a sensitive issue for the neighborhood, but again, I don't know that we have a whole lot of say so on this. So that's my 2 cents for what it's worth.
To the applicant, in the very beginning, you all discussed and noted how many would be in neighborhoods like this. How close together are these going to be as they come into being?
It really depends on the area and how much population is in the area and how many trees are in the area, honestly. So like for this neighborhood from Western over to Chartel and down to 36th and up to 45th, I think it is, we have like 5 or 6 planned. So they just don't cover that many square feet of radius. We're trying to plant them every 500 to 1,000 to 2,000 feet, depending on the type of area.
I just have one unqualified comment to say. It seems like technology-wise, we're going backwards by putting poles around for technology. It seems like, we should be doing something different than that. But I mean, if it has to be, I mean, I feel like we're saying, hey, let's put up some telephone poles again. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, but I understand it. I'd be happy to make a motion to approve it. But I mean, it just seems weird that we're putting up poles right now after all.
Yeah,
the technology
I totally
we've been.
understand. Yeah.
Well, no other country's doing it.
It doesn't make sense.
No,
I mean,
it doesn't.
the poles
No.
up. I mean, what is, it's just weird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
so
And then you're going to
basically with
go
the way
into
that
neighborhoods where, I mean, like this neighborhood, admittedly, I mean, historic neighborhoods, they have a lot of poles and things. Then you go into a neighborhood that has all underground electric and everything, and then you're going to start putting up poles in neighborhoods like that. That's just, it doesn't seem right. But anyway, I'd be happy to make a motion
We
to
do
approve
have-
it.
Okay, sure.
I mean, it's just my, I
Yeah.
don't understand.
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're saying. And we do make every effort possible to attach to something that is already there. So if there is already a phone pole, or even in those neighborhoods that have underground electric, we ideally would like to attach to the street lights that are already existing. Because of the way that technology is zoomed forward and we're using a lot more data, the cell tower just has to be closer to the user to be able to support what's going on there. So yeah, as we get closer and in more residential areas, we definitely want to attach to existing infrastructure already. But unfortunately, this is just a case where we have exhausted every possible option to find a location that meets everybody's requirements.
Sierra, how big is the pole typically, and then what are the structures that are on that? How big are those?
Yeah, so the pole height is 30 feet, and then the base is a little bit larger. If you guys have the application packet, there's a mock-up on page 7. It looks a little bit off scale because the building in the background looks really tiny compared to that, but you get about 6 feet in height, 3 feet in diameter, and then 6 feet at the base, and then the pole goes up, and then you have another about 3 feet on top that has the enclosed antenna.
Trying to see that. Is there a reason they couldn't be installed on for instance, the OG&E utility poles that are in the right of way and in the easements currently?
Yes, that's a good question. So we initially started looking at the OG&E poles that ran along Chartel. Because of the placement of those poles and the tree cover that's in the area, it didn't allow the signal to travel anywhere. So it didn't give us the height needed, which is over 20 feet, and we couldn't get outside of the trees. We came over to this side, same problem. We couldn't get over 20 feet. And then OG&E also has some requirements about, can we go on a high voltage line, primary, or can we go on something that has a guide wire? So none of the poles along this street met that qualification.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that Commissioner Meacham, did you want to make the motion on this particular item?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve HPCA 20-00176 with the specific findings and unique circumstances as noted in the staff report by the staff.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So moved by Commissioner Meacham. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Poor will second.
Seconded by Commissioner Poor. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
No button. Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Okay, the item is passed. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, moving on to item number 9. We didn't check with the public on that particular item. Was there any comments that needed to be made for the record? Okay, moving on to item number 9, HPCA 20-00177 at 912 Northwest 40th Street.
This is in Crown Heights, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Bob Sign Construction Co. for Mary and Arthur McNulty for a certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish garage required, and 2, construct garage elective. This is a garage that was damaged in the ice event several months ago. And so they are proposing to demolish and then reconstruct a new garage. Staff has recommended approval with condition just addressing whether or not the commission has sufficient documentation of the infeasibility of reconstructing the garage, but otherwise staff has recommended approval for the demolition and the new construction.
So is the applicant present, and is there any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? Okay, looks like Ms. McNulty, is that?
Yes.
McNulty. Let's see, so commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant? I mean, it looks like the tree definitely fell through the garage and caused enough damage warranting a rebuild. And in my opinion, I can certainly support the staff's recommendation to approve. I think the photo documentation here to me is enough to tell, but curious if there's any other comments or questions from commissioners.
I don't have any problem with it.
If no comments or questions, do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve item 1, demolish the garage with specific findings as noted in the staff report. And it would appear that the commission then looked at the documentation, which would be the photographs, and agree that it's eligible or whatever for demolition.
Moved by Commissioner Meacham. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Ramey seconds.
Moved by Commissioner Meacham, seconded by Commissioner Remy. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Okay, looks like demolition of the garage has been approved with conditions. Thank you. Moving on to item number 10, HPCA 2000181 at 104 Northwest 20th Street.
Sorry, before we move to number 10, do we needed a motion for constructing the new garage on item 9?
Yes.
We have a motion on construction of a new garage.
Katie, it does comment on the existing footprint, so we are giving permission to build the garage back on the existing footprint, and that is the reason that the garage is larger than we generally approve. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's accurate. Angela, can you chime in if that's not correct?
Yes, that is accurate.
Because this garage is quite a bit bigger.
It is not bigger. Initially, we believed that it was bigger, but it is not. It's the same footprint.
You thought you thought what they were proposing was bigger?
Yes, ma'am.
But it's not. Okay. I would make a motion to approve item 2 of HPCA 2000177 with the specific findings and conditions that are in the staff report.
Moved by Commissioner Meacham. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Ramey seconds.
Second by Commissioner Remy. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Okay, the construction of the garage is approved with the conditions noted in the report. And we will move on to item number 10.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you, guys. HPCA 2000181 at 104 Northwest 20th Street. Is the applicant present, and do we have any citizens that wish to be heard? Is the applicant present on this particular item?
I'll summarize briefly while we're waiting to see if they're present. This is an application to construct an addition and to replace missing windows. Some of the commission might recognize this house. This was before the commission a year or more ago now as a proposal for a demolition. We had a site visit here, and ultimately the demolition was denied, and it has since been purchased and is being rehabilitated. We have administratively approved a long list of items, maintenance related items for this property already. We recommended approval for the replacement of the window that was found to be beyond repair. Other windows are being repaired, but one was too far gone, and recommended continuance for the proposal to construct a rear addition because some of the documentation did not appear to be accurate, and we just needed better details and descriptions and illustrations of that proposal.
So Katie, it looks like the replacing the window, that was recommended approval by staff. The window's no longer there. And then on the addition, it does look like it is a little bit oversized potentially. And I believe staff was looking for more information in terms of documentation and drawings. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, it is. It's a very small house, but the proposed addition was larger than what the criteria in the guidelines support. So that, as well as just details of the design, were both concerns for the proposed addition.
Excellent. Okay, so any questions from commissioners for the applicant?
Is the applicant online?
Is the applicant here?
I do not see the applicant as I'm looking at our list of participants. The commission could go ahead and approve the window if that's not a concern for anyone, and then continue the other item to April so that we could allow the applicant time to participate in the discussion.
I think that works. Is there citizens that wish to be heard on this particular case?
This is Randy Ice with Historic Preservation Incorporated. We're the neighborhood that bought the house after the last person wanted to tear it down. We've sold it to this applicant, with heavy restrictive covenants placed on the property to make sure it's not torn down. And we're in support of any rehabilitation. You should have a copy of our comments.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Ice. I'm glad you saved the house too. That's excellent news. Okay, so seeing as the applicant is not present, do we have motions on window replacement and the addition?
I mean, I would make a motion to approve the item 6, the window, HPCA 20-00181.
Moved by Commissioner Meacham. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Schultz. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
And then do we have a motion on a potential continuance for the addition?
I would make a motion to continue item 1. I would like to comment that it doesn't follow the guidelines in my opinion, and I would like to see some changes made by the applicant that address the specific findings as noted by the staff. But today I'd like to continue item 1 to the next meeting, which would be April 4th?
April
7th.
April 7th. April 7th.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Meacham, seconded by Commissioner Schultz. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. And the first motion did pass, just as for the record.
Sorry.
And I didn't get the neighborhood letter. Did you guys email that and I missed it?
I don't think I got it either.
When did you send it in, Randy?
Sent it in right before the February 3rd meeting. But this is all the stuff off the February 3rd meeting. So it went into staff right before that. There should be
maybe it's in,
comments
okay.
on all these, all the ones in our neighborhood had comments.
Okay.
Excuse me, Commissioner Meacham, how would you like to vote on this item?
You're muted, Joe.
Aye.
Excellent. Okay, the continuance has passed as well.
This is Katie. I'll make sure that we send out the comments from the neighborhood before this is heard again, to make sure everyone has those. And we may or may not get new comments from you, Randy, based on any revisions we've received between now and that next meeting.
Okay, perfect. Let's see, moving on to item number 12, HPCA 20-00185 at 427 Northwest 21st Street. Is the applicant present? And do we have any comments from citizens that wish to be heard?
We are present.
Perfect. So Katie, go ahead.
Just to summarize real quickly, this is in Heritage Hills Ward 6 and is an application to remove a back door and window and replace with a pair of French doors, relocate a basement door and install a window, and to remove shutters. Staff did recommend approval of the conversion of the back door and window to French doors. They're located on the back of the house and not visible from the street. And recommended approval of replacement of the basement door with a window. This opening is forward of the rear 30% of the structure, which is where the guidelines allow greater flexibility for those openings, but it is visibility is minimized by a porte-cochere, and it's not a functional basement door. And then recommended continuance on the removal of shutters, just because we did not have, staff didn't feel we had sufficient evidence one way or the other on whether or not the shutters were historic or whether they had developed their own historic significance as part of the character of the property.
Thank you, Katie. So to me, it looks like question for the applicants is, have you all been able to determine whether or not those shutters were historic and original to the house? Or have you been able to determine anything with that question?
It is to our understanding that those shutters are of recent construction. You can tell just by material that it is of lightweight, a plastic coating. And then you can notice also a lot of the light fixtures on the front porch are actually centered to the window frame as opposed to the shutter itself. And that just, it would make more sense if the actual fixture was actually centered to the shutter as opposed to the window frame. And then I think there's some precedents in the neighborhood that there's a handful of Foursquare craftsmen that do not have shutters. And so it's our wish to remove these.
Fellow commissioners, I usually have an opinion on shutters as other things, but anyway, don't laugh, Taylor. I actually drove over there because when I comment on shutters, I want to be sure that I'm, that I've seen them close up. I would have originally agreed with you, but I drove over there, and on either side of the house, it is the same situation, and it's kind of unique, and is that the stiles on the windows are extra wide where the shutters are located, and then the shutters are actually placed halfway on the window stiles. What is weird is that there's like 4 or 5 other houses exactly like that, either on either side of your house or across the street, where they have these extra wide stiles, and then they have shutters halfway on them. So the one to your right, or the one that would be to your east, the white, which has original wood, they actually have, it looks like old shutters. I'm in agreement, your shutters themselves are not historic. But if you look at the other houses around there, it looks like that shutters on the front of the house applied in this weird manner are done like 4, 5, 6 times. So it would appear that the location of the shutters is original. Shutters not original. That's, I don't know what you want to do with that.
Would we be suggesting, or might we suggest that they go back with shutters in the same placement?
I mean,
something that's,
it's a weird one. I mean, if you took one down and looked, maybe it looks like it's always, but if you look at your next door neighbor to the east is the most convincing, because those shutters are actually appear to be maybe not original, but they're very old, and they have a historic pattern to them. Whereas yours, I'm in agreement, the shutter itself is not historic. The location of the shutter appears to be historic. But if you have evidence maybe that the light doesn't make sense on yours, I mean, maybe that's sufficient to have no shutters. I don't, anyway, there are other houses and on either side of you that have this interesting shutter application. So that's all.
Commissioner Meacham, might we ask of the applicant then, if we did a continuance, to go and pull some more information, or what would we ask of them if we were to?
I mean, what's your interest? I just asked the owner, what is your interest here? I mean, Do you see what I'm saying? That your neighbors have the exact situation. While not all the shutters in the neighborhood might not be, people replace shutters, but it's this distinctive location that appears that they were original, just because they're all in this exact, they're halfway on the style, and the styles are actually larger than usual. It's just unusual. What would y'all like to do? You want them off?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm just thinking aesthetically, if you look at the house, obviously the style of the shutters are not what in our research would have been on the house had they been original.
I would say that, but you have 5 other houses within a stone's throw, and they all have shutters.
They do.
You're in the exact same place. It's like they're not. If you could have a whole bunch of houses, I'm kind of with you on a prairie style house. It would seem like they wouldn't have them, but it's unusual. I mean, maybe in the 50s, people came through and the whole neighborhood decided to put shutters up. I mean, that's possible. The brick houses in the neighborhood that are similar, they do not have shutters. So it's just this distinctive location of the shutter that made me feel like that that was one of the reasons. But if so I don't know. I'm not, I understand what you're saying. The prairie style doesn't naturally have a shutter. So I don't know. Staff, do you have a comment on that?
Commissioner Fudge, can the neighborhood input here? It was in our letter, but apparently you all didn't get that. Our design review committee met and they discussed this extensively, and they decided that the house originally did not have shutters. They had several people in the neighborhood that remembered a time when these were very popular and there were people selling them door to door.
But,
and they put them.
Randy, I'm in agreement, but even in we think, 1970, that's not that long ago. That's 50 years. There's a reason for them to have, become a historic part of the house, but I'm leaning either way, but it's just, usually you would look around and you'd go, oh, well, the next door neighbor doesn't have shutters. And then maybe there's a shutter here, but there's like 5 houses that have the actual trim on the windows are all exactly alike and unique, and the shutters are in the same position. That's what makes me think that maybe it was, but it could have been a lot of things. There's a house on your street that actually has real shutters that you could actually shut. So I don't know. I'm not opposed to removing the shutters, I guess. I'm just saying that.
You just want to have the conversation, make sure we're talking about it.
I'm saying that maybe there's other, I'm just asking fellow commissioners. It depends on how strongly you feel about it, if you want to go look at it.
If Randy is indicating that the neighborhood associations met and their evidence points towards there not being shutters there, I would probably vote to remove them if that's what the homeowner wants to do. But I certainly see your point, Commissioner Meacham, on they may not have been historic to the home at the time, but they might be historic now at this point. So makes sense.
They may not have been original,
right,
but that doesn't mean they're not historic in the sense that neighborhoods' history evolves over time.
Right.
And it is kind of, like the homeowner could care less, I'm sure, that I think it's kind of cool, but that all those houses speak to that happening, Randy.
Right.
But I don't care either. I don't think it's going to have an adverse effect on the neighborhood.
Right. I guess, we do discuss shutters, and I think they are important, and a lot of times people want to take them off or they want to put them on. And so I think it's worthy of discussion because it is an important, does make a difference on the look of the house. So anyway, I'm done. I'm not making a motion. So.
All right. Well, go ahead, Mr. Rice.
Just to say, from the neighborhood perspective, we did support this. Our biggest concern was not the shutters. It was the driveway basement door, which is a coal door. It's for coal deliveries. And we thought that was historic. However, after looking at it and they had pictures of the inside and they completely reconfigured things. So it's really not functional at this point. But those were common in the neighborhood for coal deliveries when they heated the home to coal.
That's cool. Okay.
But the neighborhood doesn't oppose that.
No, we think putting a window there is fine. It is somewhat of an awkward placement of it. Those doors are very short. They're really not suitable for much of anything except coal delivery, and I don't suspect the homeowner is still using coal.
We call it a hobbit door.
Well, you could get a hobbit.
Yeah, you get a hobbit. A hobbit.
Okay, so do we have a motion for converting the doors to French doors, removing the basement door, and removing the shutters? And for the record, Commissioner Schultz, if you think it's cool, everybody probably thinks it's cool. So don't sell yourself short there.
So are we doing,
I'll make a motion to approve items 3 and 4 in accordance with staff's recommendations, and also to approve item 5 to remove shutters.
Do we have a second on that? And do we need to add, because of unique circumstances found through the neighborhood association and through the applicant's research on number 5?
See, that's the problem. How do you have a unique circumstance when 5 other houses on the street have the same shutters? But go ahead.
Can we add consistent with the neighborhood historic recommendation?
that's not a reason, really.
Sorry.
Or we could just say remove the shutters and not add a reason. Do we have to have a reason for that?
Well, not if we don't have to
We
have a
need a
reason for
unique,
anything.
we need a unique circumstance, I think, because staff recommended, did not recommend. I mean, they have a reason, why they should stay, which is the complete documentation. And so,
This is Katie, and I think our reason for recommending a continuance was that we didn't feel there was sufficient documentation that the shutters, or at least the location of the shutters, was not historic. If you all feel comfortable that you have adequate documentation of that, both from the homeowner's analysis and from the information provided by the neighborhood association, then I think your finding can simply be that the neighborhood association and property owner have adequately documented that the shutters are not historic.
Good job, Katie.
Yeah.
You can just say what Katie said if you, if that's easier.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Mr. Ice's findings is enough for me to.
So Commissioner Ridley, can you restate your motion, please?
Yes, I motion to approve items 3 and 4 consistent with staff's recommendation. I also make a motion to approve item 5 consistent with the homeowner and Mr. Ice's, speaking for the neighborhood's findings, to provide additional information to approve those items as requested by staff.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Remy, seconded by, do we have a second?
Commissioner Poor will second.
Seconded by Commissioner Poor. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
Commissioner Meacham votes no.
Okay, those items were approved with conditions. Thank you guys for the information. Moving on to item number 12, HPCA 20-00190 at 724 Northwest 24th Street. I'm sorry, 724 Northwest 20th Street. Do we have the applicant present, and are there citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? Katie, can you walk us through the summary on this one?
Yes, this is in Mesta Park, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Eric Farhang for Farhang Squared Management for certificate of appropriateness to 2 replace windows elective, 3 replace railing and columns at front porch elective, 6 install light fixtures elective, and 7 replace door with door and side lights elective. And the staff report does recommend approval, I think with some conditions for all items except for the replacement of the door with door and side lights. The proposed design does not appear to meet guidelines for, or we can't determine if it meets guidelines for materials for true divided light glazing, and proposes a division pattern between the side lights and the door and the mullions that is not typical for a historic door of this style.
Thank you, Katie. Is the citizen or the applicant, or is the applicant present? Do they wish to be heard? Do we have any comments from citizens that wish to be heard? Any questions from commissioners on this particular project? I think I'm comfortable with approving everything that staff has recommended and a continuance on the side door. If we, no, that's where I'm at. Curious what everybody else thinks, and if we have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Don't think so.
Okay, I make a motion to approve item 7 and, no, what is it? I'm sorry. Item 6 and 2 of HPCA 20-00190.
We have a second on that?
Commissioner Ramey seconds.
Are you gonna do 3? Item 3?
That we have to continue that one, right?
I'm going to continue.
No, item 7 continues.
Yeah, I'm going to continue with the second motion.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Meacham, seconded by Commissioner Remy. All in favor, please vote in prime gov. We will wait for your second motion, Commissioner Meacham.
Okay, Commissioner Meacham votes yes on this one, and I make a motion to continue item 7 and item 3 of HPCA 20-00190 to the April 7th meeting.
We have a second on that.
I'll second it.
Moved by Commissioner Meacham, seconded by Commissioner Schultz. All in favor, please vote in prime gov.
Commissioner Meacham votes yes. Aye.
Okay, perfect. That has been continued. So I think it was 3 and 7 are continued to the April 4th meeting. All other items were approved. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 13, HPCA 20-00191 at 301 Northwest 18th Street. Do we have the applicant present, and are there citizens that wish to be heard?
I believe the applicant is present. I'll just very quickly summarize. This is Heritage Hills Ward 6, and this is an application by Chuck Wiggin and Renata Wiggin for certificate of appropriateness to replace the fence. They have an existing fence and would like to replace it in the approximately the same location as the existing fence is. This did not meet guidelines for administrative approval based on requirements for the setback of the fence. They do have a very unusually shaped house. So I think Mr. Wiggin can talk you through what their proposal is and the concerns that have been raised there.
Excellent.
Great. Well, thank you very much for hearing our application. We have, as you'll see in these pictures, a fence that was badly damaged in the ice storm back in October. And the fence that you could see in the earlier pictures, which joins our house with our next door neighbor, is intact. So that doesn't require replacement or modification. But the balance, about half of the rest of the fence, and you can see it here in this picture, is down. And we would like to replace it, repair it or replace it, just depending on the condition of different segments. But basically, approximately half of the fence from this point that you can see here, which is the forward, this is the most southerly portion of the fence. This fence, existing damaged fence, is just to the left of the cedar trees that you see behind the existing wood fence in the front. So to put it another way, if you were to follow the line of that row of hedges, that's approximately where the fence is. So yeah, here's the portion that's knocked down and needs to be replaced. So technically, in order to modify this fence for administrative approval, it would have to be a transparent fence. And the idea of that, of course, is that a transparent fence enables people to see through it and see the architectural character of the house that's behind the fence. In this instance, this fence has been there for 30 years. The architectural interest of this house is really not impaired by the fence as it stands or as it has stood at a height of just under 6 feet. It doesn't really impair the view of any significant architectural features of our house. So turning it into a transparent fence will expose the air conditioning equipment, the trash receptacles, the storage materials that are on the other side of the fence. So we respectfully submit that that the intent of the ordinance to provide utility and functionality for a fence is not served in this instance by making it transparent, nor is it served by moving that transparent fence back 40% of the depth of the residence. So what we would propose to do is to basically put up the fence as I said before. It is in compliance with the height restrictions, with the exception of about 6 feet or 5 feet of the length of the fence, 6 feet of the length of that fence. And so we would prefer, with your consent, to keep the top of the fence horizontal as it has stood for these many years. And instead of cutting off the top foot, if we took a foot off of the top of the fence for that 6 foot distance, then we would be within the 6 foot compliance requirement that Angela had recommended as part of her review. And so we would ask then that the fence be, that you approve reconstruction of the fence as shown on the diagram that we submitted with our application. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and we're anxious, of course, to, now that the snow is melted, to get to work on making repairs.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Wiggin. Do we have any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project?
Yes, this is Randy Ice with the Historic Preservation Incorporated. We reviewed this. We support the applicant's application. We look at this as a repair, not a replacement. There's just a few panels down. And if we went back with different heights, it would not look right. It needs to go back just like it was. And that's what we're recommending. And we think it's a fairly simple case.
Perfect.
I think it's a repair also. It doesn't sound like the fence is changing. I thought that we could repair what was there. Why are we not being able to repair what's there, Katie?
Commissioner Meacham, Katie had to step away for just a minute.
Angela.
We are reviewing this based on the criteria for administrative approval, and staff cannot administratively approve this. When permits are required, a certificate of appropriateness is required, and a permit is required even for one panel.
Okay, but I read all of this. It was a little confusing, but basically, isn't it what Randy said, is that it's really a repair, that only this 5 feet of additional height is required, and that's the only change. If that's how I see it. So, I mean, I would say to approve, it appears to be a repair. And if you need to straighten up a little bit of it to make it all the same height, I'm in favor.
Commissioner Meacham, I believe that, you know, I'm with you guys as well, that I see this as more of a repair than anything. And I think it's simple enough in its rebuild that I'm comfortable approving, but it's my understanding that the location as it currently sits didn't meet the guidelines. And that was one of the reasons why staff couldn't approve this administratively. But I'm comfortable with putting it back up as it was and moving on down the road too.
But even though it doesn't meet the guidelines, we have lots of things that don't meet the guidelines. As long as you go back with exactly what was there, or in this case, very close, in my opinion, it's okay. That's
You may determine that for yourselves. When staff reviews items that do not meet the criteria of the guidelines, we start with chapter 3.1. And when you are removing inappropriate fabric, the replacement with new fabric that does meet the criteria is our first look at that.
I agree that I thought that we had like a 50%, all of this other stuff, that if you're going to take if you take it all off and you want to replace it with something different, that's one thing. But when you are repairing what's there, anyway, I would make a motion to approve HPCA 20-00191 with the finding that it should be held to a repair job with a minor change in the height in order to keep the height of the fence continuous. Is that correct, Chuck?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. So moved by Commissioner Meacham. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Schultz. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Commissioner Meacham, is your button working?
Yes, it is. I vote aye. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, the fence repair has been approved.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to item number 14. You're on HPCA 21-00002 at 2140 Northwest 26th Street. Is the applicant present, and do we have any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? Katie, can you walk us through the summary, please?
Yep, this is in Shepherd, Ward 2, consideration of possible action on an application by Randy Wilson, Spartan Roofing and Construction, for Shannon Ritchie for certificate of appropriateness to 4, replace 3-tab roofing material with 3-tab roofing material elective, and 5, install a chimney barrel or cricket and metal W valleys elective. These are all materials that are either changes to the existing historic roof form or that are a replacement of an existing non-historic material that is not supported by the guidelines. And the applicant has already been administratively approved to go back with an architectural grade composition shingle for the roof of the house, and needs the denial of the 3-tab product as not conforming to the guidelines will assist them with an insurance claim.
So do we have the applicants present?
Let's see.
And it's, you know, notes that I've got, we're recommending denial on both items. First one because it alters the roof line, and the second one because it doesn't necessarily meet the guidelines.
I do not immediately see someone who I can identify as the applicant in the Zoom list of participants. Angela, did you hear from them if they were going to be joining us?
I was under the impression that they were, yes. But I don't see them either.
Do we have any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project?
So
Okay.
this is Katie. My understanding is that the applicant doesn't have any objection to a denial on the 3-tab roofing material. Angela, from your communications with them, would they want to have a continuance on the chimney barrel and the valleys?
The W valleys are something that the property owner really was looking forward to installing. And as we look around the neighborhood, directly across the street, there's a green roof that has some in place. You might be able to see it on that gabled end. They really do want the W valleys. The issue with those is that we require all metal to match the color of the roof. Their only options are solid green or solid black, and they do not believe that they're going to be able to match the color of the roof. They believe that it will complement the color of the roof and the shape of the roof, and they hope that the commission will agree. But I don't have any documentation regarding that particular feature. I believe they were going to attempt to get it. So they would probably prefer a continuance of the W valleys. As the chimney cricket is located on that front chimney and visible from the front public right-of-way, I had informed them that it was very possible that this would be denied. They have the ability to flash it properly, but if the commission believes that there is something that would convince them to approve it, I'm sure they'd appreciate a continuance.
Well, to me, without the applicant present, I would vote on a continuance on the first item and a denial on the second, and maybe do we go denial with prejudice on the roof material, or what is
Yes,
your
please.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any other comments or questions, or do we have a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we deny case number HPCA 21-00002. We deny item 4, replace 3-tab roofing material with the 3-tab roofing material with prejudice, with a specific finding that the proposed work will have an adverse effect on the historic character of the district or the property. It's not consistent with the provisions of the guidelines, and it's not in compliance with the relevant sections of the municipal code 2010 as referenced in the specific findings of section D of the staff report.
We have a second.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Schultz, seconded by Commissioner Meacham. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov, and then we will circle back for the other motion.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Okay, item number 4 has been denied with prejudice. We have a motion on, item number 5.
And that a continuance is an effective, is a promising thing.
It'll give them time to come up with some different solutions and present ideas on their chimney cricket.
I don't believe that they want to present any alternate solutions.
Okay.
I think that makes a difference to me.
Yes.
Hey, Angela, I have a question on the proposal.
Yes, sir.
What's there existing? Is it just the roof is dead ending, have a dead end into the chimney, or is there any kind of cricket there currently? I can't
The
tell from the
roof is
photos.
appropriately flashed at the chimney and in the valleys.
To me, the altering the roof line is against the guidelines. To me, I don't see how we push that through without some unique circumstances, and not having the applicant here to talk through unique circumstances. I either see it as a denial without prejudice or a continuance.
This is Katie. We have typically just erred on the side of caution and continued items when an applicant was not present to discuss it rather than denying it, especially the first at bat. If they have already been in front of the commission a couple of times and we weren't making any progress, then a denial would likely be in order. But since they have not yet had an opportunity to be before the commission, I don't think it does any harm to continue this to the April 7th meeting and at least let them, hear the discussion or participate.
Okay. Well, I would recommend continuance then. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to continue item, where's it? Well, it's item 5 for HPCA 210002 to the April 7th meeting.
Do we have a second?
Commissioner Poor will second.
Excellent. Moved by Commissioner Meacham, second by Commissioner Poor. All in favor, please vote on the continuance in Prime Gov.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Okay, that has been passed, and the item is continued to the April 7th meeting. Moving on to item number 15, HPCA 210005 at 530 Northwest 20th Street. Do we have the applicant present, and are there any citizens that wish to be heard?
Applicant is present.
Excellent. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant regarding their work? And Katie, can you summarize that for us?
Yes, this is Mesta Park, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Scott Cronk for Peter Roberts for certificate of appropriateness to 2, relocate a rear door and window elective, 3, remove an AC unit and install a window required, and 4, install columns at front porch elective. And this is an AC unit that will be, I believe, replaced with a window. The applicant has located an existing window, a historic window that had been stored at the property that they potentially intend to use, and in the place of that air conditioning unit.
And staff has recommended approval on those particular items and are working with the applicant on additional information and documentation. Is that for the columns specifically? Is
Yes,
anything else?
that is correct.
Okay.
Well, there are conditions on the columns.
Yes.
Columns are off the table. I haven't found any additional information about the columns, and I can't at this time. So I liked the columns are no longer.
You're not going to do that work?
Yeah, they're not going to be.
Okay. So we don't. Is that like a verbal withdrawal?
So, yeah.
Oh, I'll submit that in writing. That just,
It's okay. I was just trying to figure
Yeah,
out
so
how to.
the applicant stating that in the meeting is sufficient that they'd like to
Okay.
withdraw that item. So we don't need to take action on that. Staff will just record that in the
Okay.
minutes and in their case file that that item has been withdrawn.
And then we have items number 2 and 3, relocating the rear door and window, and then removing the AC unit on the side of the house and installing a window that was original to the house found in the attic. Are you guys still able to use that original window, Mr. Cronk?
Yes.
Excellent. Let's see. So staff has recommended approval on both those items. Is that correct, Katie?
Yes, those are both recommended for approval. The relocation of the rear door and window, we had a condition addressing elevation drawings provided to staff prior to release of the CA, showing those openings.
What questions do we have? Do we have a motion? I'm comfortable with staff's recommendation to approve on items 2 and 3. So I would be supportive of that, but do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve items 2 and 3 on case number HPCA 21-00005 in accordance with staff's recommendations.
With conditions, Commissioner Remy?
Yeah, the conditions that are in staff's recommendations, yes.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Remy. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Schultz. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Okay, items, I think is it 2 and 3 approved with conditions? Item 4 has been withdrawn verbally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Excellent. Okay, moving on to item number 16, HPCA 21-00007 at 1703 North Hudson Avenue. Do we have the applicant present, and is there any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? As we're bringing that up, Katie, can you walk us through?
Yep, this is Heritage Hills, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Jeff Blake, Gummerson Blake, for Fred and Carter Fellers for certificate of appropriateness to 1, raise yard, 30 to 36 inches elective, 2, expand driveway concrete to back of house elective, 3, install driveway gate and iron fencing at west driveway elective, 4, install wood fencing elective, 5, construct fence retaining walls elective, 6, construct pool elective, and 7, install mechanical equipment elective. This is a corner property. It's one of the properties in Heritage Hills where the true front of the house fronts onto Hudson. So while it has a very large site and a large side yard, there's not much of a backyard just because of the way the house is set on the property. They're proposing to make some changes to the backyard, much of which revolves around being able to install a pool and fence that pool off. This does, because of the way the property is configured, brings that fencing and that pool farther forward than what the guidelines support in a side yard. The project also involves raising up the level of the yard, changing the topography, and installing retaining walls. Because this is a corner property, that will all be readily visible from the public right-of-way. So staff has recommended a continuance and outlined some of those concerns in the staff report.
Do we have a neighborhood report or a recommendation on this?
Yes. We'd sent a letter. In interest of time, let me just read our letter to you. I'll stay within my 3 minutes. The house fronts Hudson, and along with others so configured, it faces the east and has very little backyard. The neighborhood believes the only place on this lot that a pool could be built is on the north side of the house as proposed. However, we do not support bringing the fence wall 10 foot in front of the standard setback for the street. This sets a bad precedent for Hudson and will result in the others bringing forward side yards and fences, significantly altering the historic streetscape. We noticed that the size of the pool is listed at 24 by 16 on page 8 and 24 by 14 on page 9. We believe the pool could be potentially be reduced to 24 by 12 and the deck expanded back to the garage wall. And by further reducing the pool deck slightly, the entire structure could be kept behind the front wall of the structure. The grade of the lot is also higher at this point, eliminating the need for a fence and retaining wall to exceed the 6-foot requirement in the code. We are not opposed to the modifications planned for the driveway on 16th Street. However, we also recommend that the driveway on Hudson be completely eliminated if the pool is added, as this driveway will dead end into a fence. It would be better for this to be grass and the curb filled in. We recommend a continuance of this application to bring this plan into compliance with the standard setbacks and homes for this block.
Thank you, Mr. Ice. do we have the applicant present, and do you all wish to comment?
Yes, this is Jeff Blake. Hello. We used a similar house in Heritage Hills for inspiration on this application. 915 Northwest 14th has a pretty significant side fence, front elevation facing, and we didn't try to overstep what they had done, but thought a pretty sound precedent had been set for this type of modification to the front elevation. And so I would assume that precedent has some significance to what we're trying to do, or does it not?
So every plan is based off its own merit and own accord. We really try not to utilize other projects, not knowing what the unique circumstances were for each one of those particular situations. I think in looking at this, is there a way to reduce some of that footprint in the front yard is the question that I've got. And are you guys open to that, or is it not feasible?
It's pretty tight back there. And even at 14 by 24 is the correct size, not 16, but even at 14 by 24, that's not a large pool. And, Taylor, just referencing the letter that was just read, the concern was the setting of precedent. So does precedent matter or does it not? I think that's the first thing to talk about, because we're not overreaching any further than this other yard that I just described. And yet the letter describes the concern for precedent being established. So could you address that?
Sure. To me, again, it's sort of whatever the unique circumstances are for this particular project. I try really hard not to use other areas and other parts of the historic neighborhood in my decision making. And again, that's just because I don't know all the facts and circumstances that were previously relayed, or if they were even brought before the commission to begin with. And so I guess I personally try and look at the project that's at hand and address it based off the specific circumstances of that issue.
Sure.
Certainly we use other areas as examples from time to time, but me personally, I really try and stay away from it.
That's fair. Well, so, we've revised the topography just to flatten out the yard. It doesn't have a negative impact on drainage plan for abutting neighbors. The flow of water will direct, as always has been, which is to the north and to the street. And we're trying not to overreach what we'd be doing for the pool. I mean, the house as it sits has virtually no backyard and no privacy for a backyard. So in some instance, somewhere there ought to be a fence line that would allow that for this resident. And I guess we were trying not to overreach. We were, I think I don't think it's more than 10 feet beyond the front porch. And per site plan, I guess we just have to look at that and see if it's less than that. But we think this is going to be an enhancement once it's, and I realize landscape doesn't account in anyone's thinking today, but ultimately these owners are really going to invest in this project. It's going to be beautiful. It's definitely going to increase the value of this property, which is going to benefit the entire neighborhood and abutting neighbors. And I think it's a win-win for what everyone would be, acquiring in terms of upgrading the value of this house and the value of the neighborhood.
Jeff, I would just ask, and I understand, and I totally agree with what all you're saying there, but we can't use those, that information to make a decision. We have to use the guidelines. And so do you feel like that this plan follows the guidelines? Or, it appears to me that you're asking us to, look at many guidelines and disregard them. And the way that we can do that is to have a unique circumstance. And our unique circumstance can't really be that it's going to be an asset to the neighborhood, because you already have the neighborhood saying that they don't feel like that this plan would be an asset. So that's where we're at. It's not that we don't like it or that it wouldn't be beautiful, but it's just that we cannot, we have to follow the guidelines. And there's just too many things here to say, to find a reason why it's not following the guidelines. So, I mean, and that would be where I would be. If you bring us a project that follows the guidelines, it's very easy for us to say yes. But in this case, I think it would be very difficult based on the guidelines.
Where could a fence line be placed that would be acceptable to the board?
Well, it should meet the guidelines.
Okay, could you just spell that out for us so we can cut to the chase? Like, because we felt like,
the staff can, I mean, can work with you through all the guidelines.
Okay. Well, we did work closely with Katie and Angela to get to where we are today, and thought that this, based on precedent, which it's still not clear to me whether precedent matters to this board or not, or whether it's a determining factor, but we know that there are houses that you have approved or that have historically have the same historic fabric of a fence that protrudes in front of the front elevation. And so I think that's where I say there's room to allow for this, because the neighborhood already has it. That type of historic fabric already exists in this neighborhood.
Well, if there was only precedent, I would not do that. In other words, and I think that's what Commissioner Meacham was trying to say. It's a logical transition through how we can grant exceptions to the guidelines, and it's not about money, and it's not about development, it's not about assets, and it's really our purview is to protect the historic quality of the neighborhood, and that's defined in the guidelines. So to say, well, someone else did it is not something that we can use again or on each case, because we don't know what happened then. We don't know what the board thought. We'd have to go back and pull all that, and each application is unique to that property.
This is Katie. I think there's a couple of things that we can certainly look at. You know, if we look and see that throughout the neighborhood, all properties of a certain style or a certain configuration have this feature or this characteristic, we can identify patterns like that, and perhaps that pattern doesn't meet the guidelines, but it's well established. It's a historic condition that's common throughout the neighborhood, and sometimes that's a unique circumstance that justifies approval. We can also look at unique circumstances particular to the site, like the minimal backyard that's present at a structure, like at a house like this, than the way that the property is sited. I know, as you and I have talked, as the applicant and I have talked about this property in the past, we've talked about there possibly being some justification for bringing a fence farther forward than what the guidelines support because of the way the backyard is configured. But I also think that a property that has a transparent fence sitting in the yard forward of the front wall of the house is not the same thing as a property with a 3-foot tall retaining wall and swimming pool forward of the front wall of the house. That's a very different impact on the permanent work being done to transform that property. Not to say that it's not beautiful and well designed, but that's a much more permanent installation than just a wrought iron style fence that sits on the ground. So I think we can certainly look to see if there are other properties that lend support to a unique circumstance in this case, whether it's a historic pattern of fencing or findings that have been utilized by the commission previously to support a unique circumstance for fencing. But I think there is a distinction there between the existence of a fence and the existence of a lot of other permanent landscape features at the site. And that was really staff's main concern, was that the change in the topography of the site, the retaining wall, and how forward those features were going to be and how visible.
I mean, in my opinion, it's just too much. I mean, when you think we're trying to preserve something, that means all of the guidelines lend themselves towards, doing it in the back and all of that. And we understand certain properties are unique and they don't allow for certain things to be done, because corner properties have always kind of been, maybe what people think is picked on because of their situation, that you can see more or it's more restrictive. But I would think that you would have to admit that after this project is done, if you stood in front of this house, you would not think that you were there in 1928 when it was built. It would just have such a large impact on the view of the historic house and garage and lawn. And I think when you realize that, it's just going to look like a completely different place. It's just a very large impact on the original historic features. And I just don't, it's, to me, it would just really have to be scaled back to not have that impact. And I don't think covering things up with landscaping is a way to approach the problem or situation.
Well, if I could address, though, you say it's a large impact. The fence is iron and completely see-through. There are no stone or brick columns. The retaining wall is very low. And to say like it's a huge visual deviation from what's already there, I would dispute that. We were very sensitive to how it would read from the front of the street. And I really lean to Katie's words. We consulted closely with the staff on how to approach this project so that it would be, agreeable to the neighborhood. And for that reason, we kept things very minimal, very thin. Like we matched the iron detail that is already at that height on the front of the house, and we stepped down from it. And the brickwork is very low. So I
agree with all of that, Jeff. I totally agree. I think that if you were doing this project on this house and it wasn't in a historic district, you would have a great project.
Right.
But I don't think I can say that, yes, I approve this project and I am basing my approval on the Oklahoma City guidelines. It would not be possible for me on this particular one to say that, because I don't feel like that it follows the guidelines. And that is what I'm spending my time here doing. And it would be difficult. And we've had problems, issues that were big but this one, I think you have a tough site to pull off such a large project. That's so.
If the project didn't, jump out when it got to the grass and pool area, if it was level or flush, would that make a difference to the commission? And I know that that's not ideal, but can you push the pool back into the corner a little bit more to create some more green space? Like, is there possibility, Jeff, to modify to where it's not so obvious?
Sure. Well, and of course, no one would know that the pool is even there from the street because you won't be able to see it. It's perimetered by grass. My client said they would go 2 feet smaller. They would do 12 by 24. But my impression from Joe's comments was we're not disputing 2 feet. The entire concept that we've presented seems to be of concern. Like I said, Katie's comments resonate strongly with what I'm trying to represent. Joe, you're only looking at the guidelines, but I think there is room to talk about what exists in the neighborhood, what is suitable in the neighborhood, and I don't think that can be ignored. So,
well, you're saying I'm only looking at the guidelines. That's what I pledged to do, and the other is you want us to use other projects as an exemption. Then we're making an exception on this, which just allows for further exceptions in the future. It's just, I'm not denying it's a great the design is not my issue. I just do not feel like that and when you see people that come in and follow the guidelines, we immediately approve it. When they don't, we can't. And that's how I feel. I mean,
And I don't think that's true. I think there have been very specific situations, corner lots that are challenged, lots that are impacted by small backyards, where you can approve projects that do deviate from the guidelines. I've seen it done. I've seen you all do it. And I think this is a strong case for it because the hardship this client has having no backyard.
No. That I wouldn't go there for me, that there's a hardship here. That would not, there's nothing about hardship in the guidelines. And so I really feel like your best argument is to look at the guidelines, and that's going to be my final on that. But
Joe, what would you?
Guidelines, we have to. This is we are legally bound to follow the guidelines. And if I can't stand up in court when somebody sues the commission for not following the guidelines and say, oh no, I felt totally comfortable that I followed the guidelines, I cannot do that. And that's where I always see us going to court and standing up and saying, well, it was a hardship for these customers. They are this homeowner, they only had this specific place to put their project. It just doesn't work that way for me personally. I have to feel comfortable that in a courtroom, I can stand up and say, I made my decisions based on the guidelines. There can be unique circumstances. Yes, you have a small yard. I can go for that, but we're not there for me on this one.
Joe, where would you accept that fence line on this project?
Say that again, Jeff. I didn't hear that part.
Where would you accept the fence line on this project using the guidelines, Joe?
We don't design on the commission. We review, and I'm not going to tell you how to do your project.
Commissioner,
I would suggest reading the guidelines. I'm not trying to be difficult, but I mean,
you can't use the guidelines to deny this project and then not tell me what parameters you would accept the project on.
If there are people that have no architectural backgrounds and they design projects all the time using the guidelines. We've had people that have no experience draw out houses, bungalows, and get new construction all approved, and they have no, because they read the guidelines. So
what I'm saying is, you're reading the guidelines. In your opinion, this project violates the guidelines. Where would the fence line be that it does not, in your mind, violate the guide? I'm not asking you to design it. I don't want you to design it.
Okay, when you come in, Jeff, and you feel comfortable that you're just asking for some exceptions, then that would we could maybe go that direction. But I can't just take the fence out of the project and say what I would approve. I just say, as a whole, in my opinion, this project does not follow the guidelines.
I think the first one is the fence line in and of itself. Doesn't it need to be at least 40 or 60% back from the front of the house?
This is Katie. A transparent fence can be set back 6 feet from the front wall of the house. It has to be back 40% if it's solid, if it's a site-proof fence.
So I think, that based off that particular factor alone, and that's what I'm looking at too, Jeff, is just how far out that fence is in front of the front part of the house. And that's where I really struggle with it, because I do think it's going to be, I guess I think it's an aggressive approach to trying to spruce up the backyard. Yeah. And in my opinion, I think that it does need to be redesigned so that it fits with the guidelines that we have in front of us. And it's something that the neighborhood can get comfortable with. And obviously we want the homeowners to be comfortable with it as well. Sure. And I guess my desire with that is that it is, I hate saying this, but minimized to a point where it's not, obtrusive to the neighbors in the neighborhood, is where I get.
Okay, so should we go for a continuance and see if I can come up with a design? And you've somewhat answered the question that I was asking Joe, which is you're looking for a transparent fence that could be 6 feet behind the front elevation of the house, which is, I assume, the brick elevation, not the front porch, the brick face. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right, the front enclosed wall of the house.
Right. Okay. Well, could we work towards a continuance for that then?
So we can continue, the commission can continue to April 7th. We would need new documentation by Tuesday of next week, if that seems doable.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know the neighborhood association is always willing to be of service in these kinds of things as well.
Yes, we could meet with you, Jeff, if that would be helpful.
I'm glad to. I worked closely with Katie and Angela to get to this point, and we understood that if you read the letter of the law of the guidelines, that it did not sit back like we just described. But we also understood that the board has in the past approved or accepted this design on other houses within 2 streets of this neighborhood. So I think you could, if you don't think it conforms, it doesn't conform. At the same time, this historic fabric exists in the neighborhood today, and that's why we felt like we could present this design today.
I think that may be.
I think that makes sense.
Not a good idea.
Yeah. So it sounds like a continuance is in order. What do we need from the applicant and Jeff to bring back to the April 7th meeting?
We just continue it.
Okay. Okay, do we have a motion then?
Well, we didn't really discuss the driveway item. Is that all? Do we need to keep it all together, Jeff, or go ahead with the?
I look to you all. The idea was that they would have a place to park on the side of their property and a gate to enter. So if they have visitors, that would work. That's what we would wish for. But if you can give me some insight to what you all think. If you're saying no way, no how would I ever accept, a dead end driveway on the side of a property, then it would be helpful to know that today, so I don't just come back and have to hit a continuance again.
So my preference would be, I do like the recommendation from the neighborhood association on getting rid of that driveway, but I guess I feel like this all hinges around the pool and the retaining wall and the fence that's being presented. I guess I struggle with approval of these items without knowing what the final project looks like too. But
sure.
Okay.
I think, Jeff, if there's certain things that you can proceed on without having an answer on the front fence pool situation, love to know those so we could hopefully get those approved for you.
Sure, I understand. Well,
are you okay with us just doing a continuance then for both items until April?
yes, I think
Okay.
I think it's all hand in hand, like it all
Okay.
has to be solved together, right? So I understand where y'all are coming from.
And then I'll move to continue case number HPCA 21-0007 to the April 7th meeting of the commission with the specific finding that additional information is required from the applicant in order to determine whether the action requested is consistent with all relevant guidelines and are in compliance with the relevant sections of the municipal code as referenced in section D of the staff report.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Schultz. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Commissioner Meacham. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Thank you. Okay, that continuance is passed. We will move this to the April 7th meeting and review it then. Thanks, Jeff.
Yep, thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Mr. Chairman, is it possible to have like a 5-minute break?
I think we can do that. Jennifer,
10-minute.
what do we need to do to?
Yep, we can just recess we can do 10 minutes to give
Okay.
everybody a chance to take a break and then come back for these last couple of cases. So we'll
Okay.
reconvene at I've got 2:47. We'll be back at 2:57.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. All right, it is 2:57. Do we need to roll call?
Yes, Jennifer will do the roll call to confirm that everyone's still here. And then just one little reminder, if you can try to remember when everyone's speaking to introduce yourself. Sometimes it's hard to tell one voice from another, especially if we have people who are participating via phone only and can't see your lovely faces, to just say who you are as you start to speak. But yeah, I think if it looks like about everybody's here, Jennifer can go ahead and do a roll call.
Thank you. Commissioner Fudge.
Present.
Commissioner Ryman Philippe. Commissioner Farinay. Commissioner Meacham.
Present.
Commissioner Milner.
Present.
Commissioner Poor.
Present.
Commissioner Remy.
Present.
Commissioner Schultz.
Present.
Commissioner Zackritz. Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Awesome. Did we get item 16 voted on? It's showing active on my Prime Gov.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that was the last item that you had active.
Okay. Okay, so we are moving on to item number 17, HPCA 21-00008, 311 Northwest 18th Street. Do we have the applicant present? And are there any citizens that will wish to be heard?
This is Rich Parma, and I'm the applicant.
Excellent. Glad you're here.
Thanks for the neighborhood.
Excellent. Okay. Commissioner or Katie, can you give us a summary of what's going on with this one?
Yes.
And we'll open it up for questions.
This is at 311 Northwest 18th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. This is consideration of possible action on an application by Richard Parma for certificate of appropriateness to 1, widen pedestrian door opening at the accessory structure elective, and 2, replace existing pedestrian doors of the accessory structure elective. This is, as you can see, an existing set of French doors at the garage. They face into the yard. They're not visible from the street. And the applicant proposes to widen that opening to accommodate 3 doors, a set of 3 doors. This is recommended for approval with conditions, the conditions being that the proposed doors be solid wood with either true divided light or solid glass. Just that documentation of doors that meet those conditions be submitted to staff to include in the CA.
Okay, perfect. Any questions from commissioners or actually let's hear from the Neighborhood Association. Randy, if you don't mind. Talk to us about.
Neighborhood supports this application. We just, again, want the wooden doors, just like the staff recommended. That's our only thing we mentioned in our report.
Perfect. Thank you.
And we are agreeable to those conditions as well.
Excellent.
And yeah, and we're researching those options as we speak, and we'll submit something once we have a design.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners? Seems pretty straightforward. I think staff is, what did staff recommend, Katie?
Recommended approval with just conditions addressing the materials of the door.
Okay. And the applicant is agreeable to providing that documentation and providing doors that meet the guidelines. Do we have any other questions as commissioners? And if not, do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve HPCA 21-00008 with the specific findings and conditions as noted by the staff in the staff report.
Excellent. Moved by Commissioner Meacham. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Poor seconds.
Second by Commissioner Poor. All in favor, please vote in Prime Gov.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Okay, motion's passed. We will move on to the next project.
Thank you all.
Last item on our cases for individual consideration, HPCA 21-00010 at 704 Northwest 25th Street. Do we have the applicant present?
Applicant's here. Mike Schonk is the name.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Do we have any citizens that wish to be heard on this particular project? Okay, Katie, can you talk to us about this one?
So this is in Jefferson Park, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Meredith Shavitz, Pitch Perfect LLC for Teresa and Mike Shanka for certificate of appropriateness to 7, remove composition siding at rear of dwelling and install smart side, elective, and 8, install roof with a 1-foot eave on the garage, elective. The rear of this structure has an enclosure that's certainly not original. We're not sure exactly how old it is, but it has a non-historic siding product on it. And the applicant would like to go back with a smart side siding on that enclosure. And then at the garage, we don't believe it to be the original garage, and the applicant would like to install a roof that has an overhang to better handle water running off from the garage structure. And we have recommended approval for each of those items in the staff report.
Perfect. Any questions from commissioners on this particular project? Okay, do we have a motion on this particular project?
I make a motion to approve HPCA 21-00010 with the specific findings and conditions. Well, there's no conditions. There's just specific findings as noted by the staff in the staff report.
Moved by Joe Meacham. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Poor seconds.
Seconded by Commissioner Poor. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Okay, that particular project has been approved.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So that takes us through, let's see, item 6D, cases for individual consideration. Katie, do we have any other new business that we need to discuss today?
We have one other item under other business. This is related to HPCA 20-00126 at 2221 North Ollie. This is a project that you all approved recently for new construction, but due to some noticing issues that we had, we were not able to provide a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment on the special exception that will be required for multifamily residential in an HP district. So you've approved the construction project already that will contain the multifamily residential. We just needed to take action on that recommendation.
Okay, and is that, are we just approving this to be sent on? What are we actually approving or making a motion on
So
today?
you are making a motion to recommend a special exception to the Board of Adjustment for multifamily housing, multifamily residential in an HP district.
Or is it zoned single family?
So it's zoned HP. HP is the base zoning.
Oh.
And that only allows single family residential.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
We already approved the construction.
Yes, we approved the construction and we discussed and I think actually attempted to approve or to provide the recommendation, but there was a noticing error on the recommendation. It wasn't included on the notice. So we have to redo that vote. And unfortunately, it's been several months now and we haven't been able to meet. So
Okay.
I'm happy
we
to
have the
go ahead
applicant
and
here if you all have any questions for her.
I'm happy to go ahead and make a motion to recommend the exactly like Katie said, however she said it, make the recommendation to BOA on a special exception for multifamily residential in the HP district.
Moved by Commissioner Meacham. Do we have a second?
Commissioner.
Who wants that one, Linda or Cassie?
Okay, this is Commissioner Schultz. I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Schultz. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov.
Commissioner Meacham votes aye.
Okay, that has been passed and the approval will be recommended.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, any other items to from the communications and report section of our agenda, Katie? Section 8.
So we have our list of administrative approvals here from the, we have not been re-reporting out the administrative approvals each month, even as we've not met. Those do get noticed to surrounding property owners. They've been in the agendas that have gone out even when we've ended up canceling the meetings. They're posted online every week. So if you all ever have any questions at all about things that are being administratively approved, feel free to let us know. But this agenda would have been 40 pages long if we'd included all the administrative approvals we'd done since November. So again, at any time, feel free to reach out to staff if you have questions about administrative approvals and that process. We have a couple of withdrawals, just items that have either been modified or not moved forward, work that people decided they weren't going to go ahead and proceed with, so they've withdrawn their applications. And we can certainly follow up if you have questions about any of those. And then a couple of administrative closures. These are items that are closed out by staff, either because the application is submitted and then never completed. And so we have the ability to close those administratively after 90 days when they're incomplete, that sort of thing. Nothing to report from our other city bodies that we report on at this time. You all will be seeing National Register nominations coming up in the next month or two, and you'll also be seeing a grant application for our Certified Local Governments grant that we do each year that will come to you all for a recommendation before it goes on to the State Historic Preservation Office. So those will be under your other business in the next couple of months.
Perfect. Okay, anything, Rita, from the Municipal Counselor's Office?
No, just hello, everyone. We haven't seen each other in a long time.
It's great to be back. That's
Hi,
for
Rita.
sure. Let's see. So next item is any items from any of the commissioners that we want to discuss today.
I don't have an item, but I would like to say that to new people is that before all of this, we generally would meet for drinks on occasion after the meetings. So you have something to look forward to in the future. We will, we usually do cocktails over at the museum, and it's a great time for everybody to get to know each other. But I don't know who's been on longer at this point. I think, is it me?
I think it's you, Joe.
Oh, no. And so anyway, I just want to welcome everybody myself and say, hey, learn to make a motion so that I don't have to make them all. And they have a little sheet for you, which is what I studied. And the other is, don't be afraid to make mistakes because I goof them up all the time. So you can just ask Taylor. He has to correct me. So anyway, glad to have everybody. It's nice to have a quorum and the ability to have a quorum. So hope you enjoy your commission duties. I like it, and I hope you will too. So
I think we are the hardest working commission in the city with obviously the best staff to support us. And you know, what Joe left off is that the senior most person on the board has to buy all those cocktails too.
Do that just once.
Yeah. But no, I'm thrilled to have Cassie and David on the team. Vahid is obviously going to be a great addition as well. So I'm fired up to have him here and helping us out. And I mean, I think we truly are one of the most active commissions, especially in terms of just the number of cases that we see compared to others. So you may not have known what you were signing up for, but we're glad to have you. That's
We're glad to be here.
Awesome.
I had one question. Are we going to have a workshop pretty soon? It seems like it might be good timing with new commissioners. And
so I think this is Katie. I think I'll send you guys an email poll. We are scheduled to have our next HP commission meeting next Wednesday, just a week and a half away. And then I believe we were scheduled to have another workshop coming up in March as well. That may be a little more back-to-back, eating up your day on Zoom calls than people want that close together. But we'll look at those dates and send an email around to see when people would want to do a workshop. We have also typically over the past several years, we've done a training for all commission and committee members where we would all meet. Either we've done it at the convention center, we've done it at the Hall of Mirrors. With COVID right now, it doesn't seem wise to have a big gathering with all of the commissions and committees together in an indoor space like that sort of thing. So we've kind of delayed scheduling that, and we may, now that we can meet virtually again, we may look at doing, you all have workshops on a regular basis, but the other commissions and committees don't. And we may try to do some sort of format where we break out into smaller groups, getting, 30 or 40 people, a workshop setting on a Zoom call can be a little challenging, but if we do it in smaller groups, it may be more effective. So we'll reach out about a HP Commission specific workshop in the coming weeks and months, and then keep you updated on that citywide commission committee training as well.
Thank you.
And if you all have, both for HP workshops and for that citywide commission committee training, anytime you have ideas of things that you think would be helpful, speakers you think we should try and get, if there's a city department that you'd like to hear from, any sort of content like that you think would be useful, please just let me know.
So we have a meeting on March the 3rd.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm thrilled that we were able to get through what we got through today and by 3:13. I think that's great news. We've obviously got a packed agenda for next week. So if we can be there, great. And is there I'm looking down the list, any citizens that wish to be heard before we adjourn? Okay, well, we will wrap up today's meeting. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Katie, Rita, Angela, and everybody else. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.